Josh, I want to talk about NPCs. I want to give some good, simple tips about how you can get your NPCs off the ground, and then maybe even give a few tips on voice acting for people that are nervous about it. What do you think about that?
I think that sounds great. I think that sounds as easy as one, two, three.
Here we go, Josh. The ABCs of NPCs. Let's start with A. Actionable. What about an NPC will inspire action?
An NPC is your opportunity to encourage players to engage with the world. So you're using an NPC to drive players' action. And that could be something as simple as, this is my shopkeeper. He sells beans. His name is Giuseppe Bean. And, he just loves to sell pinto beans, and now your players have a reason to go into town and whatever. It doesn't have to be silly like that too. It could be the magic shop or the weaponsmith or anything like that. But you're giving them just a clear and simple way for, this is my world, this is a person who lives in my world, and here's a way that you could engage in this world. The other side of that, and this side could also be a shopkeeper, oftentimes is, but it's going to be a plot hook. NPCs, I feel like, are one of the best, if not my favorite, if not the best way to dish out some plot hooks and create stories and quests and problems that your players care about. And your players care about those problems because your NPCs care about those problems. If those, we'll get into more of this maybe when we get into the B's and C's, but if your NPCs feel real and they have things that they care about, and when those things are in question and in danger, it's going to matter to your players, and they're going to want to take action and engage with your world so that they can help the NPCs and help the world. It feels real in that sense.
Yeah, I really like that because you can kind of inspire action from players that are more altruistic, a little bit more, they want to do good and things like that. And you can also, because not every D&D group is fully filled with those characters. Usually there's one or two, and then there's a few that are more self-motivated. So a good way to inspire action that way could be to threaten some kind of supply that the selfish character or self-motivated character needs. So now they have a reason to go on this adventure too. And I really like it because this is a great way you can showcase the consequences of those kinds of decisions and actions that the players and or characters take with these NPCs. Do they help keep that supply line free and clear? Well, now they have access to the things that that shopkeeper sells. Do they ignore that? Well, now they don't. Well, maybe they're just mean, and now that shopkeeper is raising prices. Maybe they're just ignoring someone's pleas for help, and someone dies, and then their family members are saying, hey, I'm coming after you. I need to take care of this, some business. There's a ton of ways that you could really showcase player agency here, and it all comes from what kind of actions are you trying to inspire as the dungeon master, and NPCs are a beautiful way to make a world come alive like that, because it does inspire action. If they like an NPC, they want to protect them. It's very simple that way.
I think it's interesting the way that you were talking about that too, because some of the examples you gave are almost like the inverse of NPCs driving player actions. Now it's their players driving NPC actions, where like, oh, now I'm going to raise my prices. Now I can't sell this. Now I can't, anything like that. But I think all of that kind of brings us to the B, which is believable. If your NPCs are believable, and this doesn't mean that they can't be fun, but if your NPCs are believable, it's going to make your world believable. It is the base level of world building, and the biggest way that your players interact with that world is through the NPCs that you create. So if they're not believable, your players might have a hard time actually engaging and feeling like they care about the world or anything, because it won't feel real to them. But how do you make them believable, right? Give them something relatable for the players and the characters. This is part of what makes players care, right?
It is. I think what is really nice about that is because it is a game, and people always, they want to poo-poo metagaming. There's such a good lane that metagaming can live in. So I'll take a great example, Ancient Relics and Hoki Religions. Evan loves puzzles. So what do you give Evan? You give Evan puzzles. Is that metagaming? I would say yes. Is it awesome metagaming? I would also say yes. It's just what it is. I know that's not an NPC, but it's the same principle. if you know someone just really loves pets, maybe you're going to have someone who just has a ton of cats in their house or whatever. Like it could be anything that's going to attach both the player to the character to the world, and the game just feels more cohesive that way. And real people have things like flaws, they have quirks, they have personalities of their own and things that they care about. So it's kind of like the main villain thing to do as a DM, but threaten what they care about, Josh. Do it.
Well, I mean, that's conflict, right? Everybody memes it and poo-poos it, if you will. But if the only things that are being threatened are things that no one cares about, you live in a pretty great world.
Fine.
Who cares? Some evil necromancer is killing all of the mosquitoes.
You literally want my
Good on
poo-poo?
him.
Yeah. Good job.
It's
If you know the actual real world effect of that and you want to let us know in the comment section and how that probably is a brilliant plot, go for it.
I've heard that they actually, well, I don't know nearly enough about this to have a valid opinion, but I've heard that we'll get on just fine without them, even though
There it
they
is.
provide food to a lot
There
of
it is.
things. We mentioned this before, and I think it all comes down to don't be a jerk. Don't always threaten everything that everyone cares about. Don't kill the player's favorite NPC just to kill the player's favorite NPC. But it's another way that you make NPCs relatable is by giving them things that they care about and then showing them in distress and worried about when those things are in danger.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe the blacksmith's son is gone. He was kidnapped by undead. That's interesting, right? Not killed by undead, kidnapped by undead. What is that? That's going to affect his business. That's going to affect his prices. Going to affect his workload.
His mood.
So even just his mood, even just for selfish reasons, it to the players now. They have to go do something if they want help, person. And if not, if they're just good people, then they want to help because that's a crappy situation to be in. I wanted to say, we're talking about believable NPCs. We're talking about, make them like real people, make them have flaws and personality and all those things that Jake was mentioning before. Just because you make realistic NPCs doesn't mean you can't also make fun NPCs. And it doesn't mean that your real NPCs can't be fun, because there are some quirky ass people in the real world.
Yes. The first person that came to mind when you mentioned that to me was, again, from Ancient Relics and Hokey Religions, Jasper. Jasper was very much in the lane of what I think you would consider a silly NPC, but you had so many human elements sprinkled in that was just like, okay, there are real life people out there that just have this front that they have. They're like an onion. There's just layers, You and Evan, I thought, did a great job.
Thanks. That was fun. That was Mr. Jasper Alavodka. You should definitely check that out. That was a fun little couple of episodes.
I completely agree. Yes, I may be biased, but I think it's an excellent show. And one of the things that I like, and who's I think would be my favorite NPC from Ancient Relics and Hokey Religions, was Owen. And that brings us to our C in this discussion, which is curated. And that's the idea of pulling inspiration from like TV shows, movies, books, whatever, comic books, doesn't matter, even your own life, where you can create deep and meaningful people. And so who is Owen based off of?
Maybe spoilers if you don't know. Not really. Owen was based off of Bob Ross. So Owen was this man who was clearly involved in some sort of conflict, who is now lives in the woods. He is known for being an artisan and crafting these incredible weapons out of wood. But he's a deep thinker. Some might say a mad thinker. That's a reference to one of our very good friends. Of course, he looked like Bob Ross. He had the big poofy fro and sounded like Bob Ross as well. And I think that's an interesting tool that you have where you could create an NPC and put all of these layers to them. And players want to engage with those layers and find out more about them because they're approachable, because they know, oh, hey, is this the joy of painting? Is this what? Is it
Yes.
Bob? You don't have to go as deep with it as I went, where like he looks like him, sounds like him, and he creates things. But you could also just go deeper and go completely into it and take away the whole other side and the complexity if you want. It's okay sometimes. I think a mix is nice, pull a little bit from a character and throw it in there and then use that, and that's what makes them approachable. And it's using what you know instead of just like creating something all from scratch. I'm saying I love Bob Ross. I've seen so much Bob Ross before they put it on Twitch, when they put it on Twitch. I don't even know how much Bob Ross I started watching after he became a streamer.
Who knew that all these years later it would be like one of the most popular things ever? He was an excellent NPC, and I really like that I'm going to say an expression that I've heard before, like eat the hay, leave the sticks. Like you use what you want to use and what makes sense to use, and then you just ignore the rest because it doesn't apply. You got to mix in different philosophies, you got to mix in different like deep thinking things that work for you into this NPC. And if anyone is watching Dragons of Stormwreck Isle, which hasn't released yet, but maybe you're watching this video after, I don't know, but I feel like perhaps Zugarth the Barbarian may have a little sprinkling of some wisdom things in there that he's always kind of throwing out there. So some player tips work for NPCs too, I was just saying.
Just a personal thing, I totally aside from the ABCs. I love the concept of a warrior poet. Knowing that about me, you'll see that in a lot of my characters and probably a good amount of my NPCs too. So there it is.
You can make them kind of meme versions of things you know. You can just use tropes from your favorite movies or anything like that, you know, like a smuggler with a heart of gold. Probably asking you to like the video right now. That's probably a good place to go, is to use things that you enjoy, because it's going to be a little more authentic. And I think I said it before, but you can also base them off of real people that you know. It probably works better if everyone at the table knows who this person is, but it's also that's a fine line. I mean, one of the best rules in life is don't be a jerk, but unless it's like obviously lighthearted, it's probably best to not to make an NPC based off of a player in the game or maybe one of their loved ones. That's really tricky. But Jake and Josh said to make fun of everything. Like, no, that's not where we're going with this.
I guess that's the first half of this video, right? Because those are the ABCs. But you just reminded me of something else we were doing in this video when you brought in that voice, that little kind of like higher voice, which I can only assume is like the annoying devil's advocate for everything.
That's what they all sound like. All of them.
But it gets the point across, and it's simple, and it kind of just brings us into some tips for just doing voices. Because you don't really have to do voices. You could do exactly what Jake did. Everyone knows the type of character that he was portraying. So what he did was go like this. Oh, but yeah, Jay said this. And you understand, right? You could just make your voice sound a little higher. You could use your regular voice. You could go a little bit deeper. I think everybody could. Maybe you can't go as deep.
Yeah, you're just showing off.
But everybody has some inflection in their voice. You could do regular, you could do a little higher, a little lower, way higher, way lower. And those are just options that you could do without trying to do a specific accent or impression or anything like that. But it separates it changes it, depending on how you play your games. It lets players know that it's not you talking, it's an NPC talking. There's definitely value to those little things, and I think so many people beat themselves over not being able to do voices, but it's like, you could do voices.
You don't have to be good at it.
Yeah, we'll just keep it simple.
Keep it simple, absolutely. That's another thing too. Some people just speak faster than others, right? So maybe you're using your regular speech patterns and cadence, or maybe you start talking really fast as you want to get your points across. So this is someone who's really hyper and amped up and probably has too much coffee. And then you have someone who might be a little bit different in how they talk and things. And one of my favorite NPCs I've ever voiced is also in Dragons of Stormwreck Isle. And I really liked taking care of Tarek there. So this is just the voice I used for him. And you could be quicker, you could be slower, you could be higher, deeper. There's a whole bunch of combinations there that now all of a sudden exist, and it can differentiate many different things. And if you are good at repeating it, you might just have them say something and they're like, oh, I know what this is. I know what this is. They get excited. Your players will love it.
Yeah, and of course, if you can do accents too, then, a little accent. Just like Jake just did a little kind of like Southern drawl, like you can do a little bit. Even if you only know one accent, throw it in there every now and then. It'll be fun.
That's the accent of the region. What are you talking about?
Yeah. Try to learn one too, because if you do it poorly, it's just this regional dialect. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah, just stay on target and you're good.
Yes, exactly. Consistency is the key.
Speaking of inconsistency, some NPCs mispronounce words, right? Like that's, there could be little quirks in the speech that are different. Like we have a friend of ours, every time he would say Smurf Neblin, I think is the name. I'm actually drawing a blank. Is the actual thing. Smurf, right? Smurf Neblin. How do you say that, Josh?
Smurf Neblin.
But he would just call it like Smurf Neebly every time. It's like, okay, well, that's not correct, but it makes him endearing. It's one of those things that I love about my friend.
Yeah, and it's a little thing that you don't have to know how to do voices. You don't even have to go higher or lower or fast or slow. This NPC has strange pronunciation of words. Grandchildren.
They have weird facial expressions when they talk.
Yeah, maybe they put emphasis on just random words for no apparent reason. You don't have to be good at voices. Just throw little things in there every now and then. You don't have to do it every time too, but it adds something. So speaking of voices and voice acting and just fun things you could do with that, this actually is not our first NPC video. Jake and I did one a long time ago, and the intro to that video is literally the two of us going back and forth doing impressions and funny voices back to each other. So I think it's a good video. I think there's some fun stuff in there that, watching it is worth it. But if you just want to see us make silly noises, watch the intro. It'll be a fun time.
Well said.